In the early hours of the night, while most of the Caracas was asleep, US military aircraft flew over the sea. Communications were disrupted, security systems were neutralized, and in a tightly coordinated operation, US forces entered Venezuela's capital. Within hours, President Nicolas Maduro and his wife Kilia Flores were taken into the custody. No press conference, no international mediation, no warning. By morning, they were gone, flown out of the country, and later presented in a US courtroom in New York to face long-standing narcotics and terrorism-related charges. This was not diplomacy. This was not sanctions. This was the forceful removal of a sitting head of state, and the world took notice. So now the question arises that why Trump did it? The official story and the real talk. The official explanation came quickly. The White House said that this operation was about law enforcement, about years-old changes accusing Nicolas Maduro of narco-terrorism and drug trafficking. This is the legal justification. But then came the part President Trump didn't whisper. He said it out loud. Oil. Venezuela has the largest proven oil reserves on earth, and Trump openly talked and bringing that oil back online, letting US companies manage it, sell it, and benefit from it. No coded language, no subtlety. And then there's the third layer, the one people talk about openly now. At the same time this operation happened, Trump's name was again circulating in public discussion around the Epstein files. Nothing proven, nothing new legally, but enough headlines to be uncomfortable. So people asked a simple question. When you have a controversy at home, what changes the conversation faster than a foreign operation involving oil, helicopters, and a captured president? Now, why this matters beyond Venezuela? This was not just about one country. For decades, even powerful nations avoided directly removing foreign leaders because it crossed a dangerous line. This line was crossed, some governments applauded the move, others warned it weakened international law. Many quietly wondered, if this can happen there, then what stopped it elsewhere? This operation changed expectations. And when expectations change, every country has to reassess its position, including Canada. Ottawa's response has been measured and telegraphed. Canada has never recognized Nicolas Maduro as Venezuela's legitimate president. Canada has long supported democratic reforms. But Canada has also stressed something equally important. No country should unilaterally use military force inside another sovereign nation. In other words, Canada agrees Maduro was not a democratic leader, but Canada does not endorse how he was removed. This balance is intentional because Canada's global influence depends on rules, not raw power. So now let's discuss the economic impact. Why Canada should care about Venezuelan oil. Venezuela's oil returning to global markets affect Canada directly. Canada produces heavy crude, the same type of Venezuela produces. More supply means more competition, pressure on oil prices, shifts in where buyers look for energy. Some Canadian energy leaders see opportunity, others see risk. Either way, Canada's energy sector does not exist in isolation. What happens in Venezuela can influence Canadian jobs, prices, and exports. This is not theoretical. Market reacts quickly. So now the question comes that what it means for Canada. Let's simplify this. Canada is not under threat. No one is suggesting that US is coming for Canada. But when a powerful neighbor shows it's willing to use force without broad international approval, it changes the global environment. Canada shares defense cooperation with the US, continental security through NORAD, Arctic airspace, and maritime responsibilities. So when US military behavior shifts, Canada has to adjust how it plans, protects, and positions itself. The concern isn't invasion. The concern is unpredictability. What Canada can do next? President Trump has previously hinted at acquiring Greenland, a territory that belongs to Denmark, a NATO ally and a close partner of Canada. Those remarks were dismissed publicly, but they were taken seriously by Arctic nations. For Canada, the Arctic is not a theoretical concern, it's a core national interest. Canada, Denmark, and Greenland already work together through NATO, Arctic security forums, scientific and territorial agreements, shared commitments to sovereignty and international law. Canada's response is not confrontation, it is coordination. By strengthening partnership with Denmark and other Arctic allies, Canada reinforces a clear message. Arctic boundaries are not up for negotiation through pressure or force. Canada is also increasing its diplomatic and defense focus in the north, not to provoke but to assert presence, cooperation, and stability. The arrest of Nicolas Maduro marks a turning point. It tells the world the power politics is back, openly and unapologetically. For Canada, the lesson is clear. We cannot control global power styles, but we can control how we respond to them. We can control how we respond to them, and by staying principled, prepared, and grounded in law, Canada protects its interest in an increasing unstable world. Because stability is not created by shock operation. It is created by rules and by countries willing to defend them. I'm Garima Singh signing off. See you next week. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.